Welcome to the Business That Matters Spotlight. My name is Warren Coughlin, and I'm your host. When we talk about making the world a better place, one of the challenges is helping others see that impact. And lots of good people don't go around bragging about the impacts they have. They're too busy just doing the work. And that's, in fact, one of the reasons why the Spotlight exists. We want to give profile to those doing good in the world through their businesses so that they can inspire others. And we want to bring that wisdom and experience and expertise of others to help those of you wanting to grow a business and do some good in the world yourself. And today, I'm very excited to share the spotlight with someone who checks all those boxes. Rob Murray, founder of Intrigue Media. Not only is he a successful entrepreneur himself, he also provides outstanding support to other entrepreneurs. That gives him, in my view anyway, really deep insights into what works and what doesn't. He's also a leader within the entrepreneurial community through his involvement with EO, or Entrepreneurs Organization. That's where I first got to know him. And as someone whose business is a certified B Corp. He's also a totally dedicated family man and dad, and a naturally gifted leader who embodies what I call the 4 C's: confidence, competence, compassion, and clarity. And you can find Rob at intrigueme.ca. Rob, welcome to the Spotlight.
Thanks, Warren. This is awesome, man. I'm stoked to do this with you.
Oh, it's great to see you. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm a realist. Not everyone has the time to stay and listen all the way through a podcast. So like the good marketer you are, let's start with a headline. Before we dive into your story, you've worked with tons of entrepreneurs in lots of different contexts. If you could share one piece of advice or bit of wisdom that you've acquired that you feel could help other aspiring entrepreneurs, what do you think that might be? I'm going to put you on the spot right out of the gate.
It's no problem. I think that if you think about entrepreneurs and they go about on this crazy journey of starting their own business. Some people say jumping off a cliff and learning how to build a plane as they fall. Leveraging their houses to, hire people, supporting the communities that we operate in, all that good stuff, all the crazy things. They're the people that really essentially say that they want to, it's cliche to say, be the change you want to see. It's not cliche to do it, right? But you can make as much money in the world as you want. If you have no time to do what you're passionate about, then it's really all for naught. And so my big thing for folks is, if you want time, you have to take time. And so often I hear people, they're too busy to do X. And that's fine if they think that that isn't important. But sometimes I hear people say they can't get to important things, whether that's dinner with their family, whether that's taking a vacation, whether that's finding a hobby. Often, you probably see this all the time. Entrepreneurs, they don't do anything with their lives. All they do is work, and then maybe hang out with their friends and family for a bit. So, I just hear it too many times that people are too busy. And I think that people have just kind of viewed time maybe a little differently than they could. Because a lot of people ask me about time management. How do you do so much with kids, family, business, EO, volunteerism, blah, blah, blah. But really for me, it's about priority management. And I really just every 6 months, take a second to say, what's the most important to me? And does my calendar match up with what's important to me? And yes, friends and family, home and friends, working out, volunteerism, all color coded, all in my calendar, all matching, what I'm hoping to do. And I'm not saying I got it perfect, but I think a lot of people miss out on the stuff they really want to do because they don't think they have the time to do it.
Now, did you always have that perspective, or is that something you came to through some hard-earned wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, pressure creates diamonds, I think. And one of the things have been on a pursuit. Lots of great business books talk about, you got to focus on the one thing. There's a great book, One Thing. What's the one thing I can do this year that if I get done, everything else becomes easier and or unnecessary? What's the one thing I can do in this quarter? So on and so forth, month, week, day. But there's not much in there about what the one thing should be. Not a lot of people can tell you what you need to prioritize. So I've been on a long, educational road to try to figure out where I need to spend my time and where I can bring the most value to the people around me, whether it's my team or my clients. And then in doing so, realizing that you can actually do way more with less. And also realizing that if you are divorced and fat and out of shape after 20 years of running a business, that's not necessarily successful entrepreneurship.
Right. Well, let's get into a little bit more of that. So if you like that one, stick around. We're just going to get in a little bit more about Rob right now. So Rob, let's talk about you and Intrigue first. What does Intrigue do, and who do you do it for?
Cool. I mean, at our essence, we empower leaders to strengthen communities. That is the purpose of the company. We happen to be a marketing company. So if you get into what we do, we're a digital marketing company focused on helping generate qualified leads for entrepreneurs in the home improvement and construction industry. We typically work with people that are between, say, $2 and $10 million in revenue, that are kind of sick and tired of, not knowing where their marketing money is going. So, whether there's a bunch of tools that we use, whether from website development to conversion rate optimization, Google ads, Facebook ads, email marketing, CRM optimization, workflows, automations. There's a lot to it, but at the end of the day, we help people focus on quality lead generation and like really, really clear reporting so that they can see very clearly what dollar worked, what dollar didn't, and what the ROI of our relationship is.
You mean people shouldn't just throw money at marketing and then hope it works?
Well, what is it like? It was I can't remember the guy's name anymore. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was like in the 60s. And it was like half my marketing works, half my marketing doesn't. The problem is I don't know which half.
Don't know which, yeah.
The days are gone. Like everything is so clear. You might be off a couple bucks, on $100,000. You might be off maybe $3 to $5 grand, but like 95% accuracy on attribution to result. Yeah, I think the days are numbered. No more retainers. You should know where your money's going, know what's working, and you should be able to figure out the return on relationship that you're having with somebody for sure.
And so that's, you say those days are done, but I've met a lot of marketing companies who actually don't preach that level of accountability. So what's your secret sauce? Like there's a lot of marketing and media companies out there. And I know from folks that have worked with you that you do deliver results to the point where you have an ROI guarantee, I believe. So that means you're pretty confident in your ability. So what allows for those kind of results?
Well, so there's a number of things that you layer into it. So first of all, if you look at what's possible from a technology perspective, attribution, behavioral attribution of an outcome, a phone call. So a lot of service companies, whether you're professional services, home services, whatever, your professional services, there's usually two main ways to contact. That's typically going to be a form submission on a website or a phone call. Being able to measure where those phone calls and form submissions came from is actually not that difficult. When set up properly, it's pretty easy to measure. And there are specific tools that you can use. And for anybody out there, What Converts is a very cool tool when set up properly that will actually give you names of the people that inquire based on their form submissions and their phone numbers, and be able to tie it to your Google ad account and what ad groups, and do they come through organic search, or do they come through a Google ad campaign or a Facebook campaign, or do they get hit by an email, whatever. So the technology itself is available. So, and after many years of people essentially grinding us into the ground, being like, prove your freaking worth, we found the technology stack that we needed to be able to serve the entrepreneurial community we serve. Because this stuff has been available for a long time at an enterprise level, using things like Adobe Analytics, or there's a premium level of Google Analytics that nobody pays for because it's like 150 grand a year, or using things like Salesforce and SAP have these really big enterprise solutions for analytics. But now it's available for entrepreneurs. So that's one. The next thing, though, is niching. And this is the other thing that we try to focus and help our clients with, because it's working for us. And the more narrow we become and our clients become in the markets that they serve, the more predictable the outcome of the work becomes. As we start to do the same thing for the similar people, across many different geographies, we're able to take the lessons learned from one client and pass it on to the next, or on to 25 other ones. So, as we have 30, say clients out of say 100, all in the same business type, we're able to take the lessons learned from each account and apply it across all accounts. That creates a level of predictability that then we can go to market with and say, hey, look, we've done for 30 other people. They're all really happy. You probably know half of them. Why don't we just start working together? And that's what we've been on the road for, last maybe 2 or 3 years, becoming more niched in what we do.
And how do you navigate conflicts?
Geography.
Just by geography?
So we used to be someone would consider us a horizontally positioned solution we're a local marketing company. If you're in this local area, we can solve your marketing problems. which was really difficult to do because every single time someone came to us with a new business problem, it was like a Rubik's Cube. And it's very difficult to systematically build a Rubik's Cube solving company, for these large complex problems. So once we looked internally and said, where are we bringing the most value to clients that are the happiest and the most profitable, we realized that home improvement and home services was a really big, huge win for us, and said, well, instead of just being local, why don't we go across Canada and the US? And then the marketplace is massive, and then we don't cross pollinate. We don't have any competitive issues of people being within the same community, boundaries.
And what about you personally? Like, how did you end up here? Did you pop out of high school and say, I'm going to run a marketing company, or like, how did that come to be?
Yeah, university, third year, Paul DeMarco and I, it was Paul's original idea. He wanted to put TV screens between mirrors at hair salons and sell ads to businesses that wanted to advertise at hair salons. So maybe October, still had a bunch of OSAP money. It left for the rest of the school year in third year university at University of Guelph. He came up to me and said, hey man, I got this guy, we can buy this TV. It sends wireless signals that we can play videos on, which was totally useless at the time, but whatever. We was like, okay, cool, let's buy this TV. So we bought this TV. We walked around downtown Guelph into every single shop, whether we should have or not, because there was some really sketchy shops back then. Health, what is it? Health spa doesn't mean what everybody thinks it means.
I hear you.
So yeah, we walked in and said, hey, what would you think about paying us $50 a month if we put this up at the University Center? No contracts. Would you be interested in, putting a video on this TV screen if we installed it up there? And response was pretty good. We walked into over 200 businesses, and I would say, at least half said that they'd be down. So a year later, through long story short, the TV got installed. Paul had no idea what he was doing. It fell out of the wall the first time, but it got put in there at the hair salon. But people wanted it to be pointing at the university, main traffic, not between a mirror. So we did that. Went back to everybody we talked to and said, hey, it's up. Would you pay us $50 if we'll make you a video free of charge. If you like the video, you pay us $50. We'll put it on the screen. People said, yep. So we used an HP point and shoot camera and a random, used laptop. We'd go in, take pictures, and come back 2 hours later with a video that we had made and said, you like the video? Everybody was pretty stoked. They'd pay us $50, no contracts. And we started putting, these clients up on these TVs. We got a 90-day, no interest, no payment credit card from a kiosk that we applied for at Future Shop. Instant approval, which gave us enough money to buy the equipment for one more TV. So a TV, a computer, a mount, and cables was about $2,250. And so we would have 90 days to install it and sell enough advertising on that TV to pay off the $2,500. And so we did that 13 times over the course of 5 months. And so we had 14 televisions up in market. And then we ended up, we thought our first year was going to be $8,000 in revenue, ended up being 20. We thought our second year was going to be 60. We ended up being 100. And then we sold a third of the business to a company out of Kitchener-Waterloo. They capitalized us, so we brought the business then to Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. In 2010, we franchised it to Markham, and then into Milton, Oakville, Hamilton. And then
People who don't know, those are all sort of communities around the greater Toronto area.
Yeah. And then as we had built this client base, everybody said, hey, when are you guys going to start building websites? My nephew went to school and I can't get a hold of him anymore. Or my friend doesn't do websites anymore. He got a full-time job. And then they're like, how do you get to the top of Google? What's this Facebook thing all about? And so this client base that had grown had then pulled us into online marketing, which is where then the main growth of the business came from. Now, the interesting thing, though, that I want to share with you people that are listening is, people are like, why do people like working with you? And we had this trainer at the time. And we said, well, because we do good work, we get good results, we have great design, because we're awesome. And they're like, well, is that what your customers say? Or is that what you think? And I said, well, that's what we think. We know that. That's what they'll say. And so they're, well, between now and next week, go ask your customers why they work with you. And every single person, maybe minus one, literally said, we work with you because you do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And that was in 2008. 9. We do surveys now. The last video testimonial I just did with somebody, his name's Chris. He's out of Tacoma, Washington. And I asked, why did you decide to keep working with us? And he says, because you followed through on your promise you did. You said you're going to do. 15 years later, nothing's changed.
That's awesome. I was doing presentation training of all things for a senior guy at a major pension fund, and he could move the markets in an afternoon. Like his portfolio was that big, and he wound up over the time using me for some coaching politically within the organization. And the same thing, I actually asked him, well, why? Like all of a sudden I'm doing this stuff. And he actually said to me, and it was interesting because he was so used to people kissing his backside, because he had so much sort of market power. And he said, you're the only consultant I've ever met who's never late, and you always tell me the truth. And it was that simple. And that just do what you say you're going to do, be a person of value.
Yeah.
Now, to do that consistently it's not easy. I shouldn't say that. It's clear for one person or two partners to do that. To do that within an organization requires some attention to culture. And from our conversations in the past, I understand culture is a pretty big deal for you, I think.
Yeah.
So how do you describe Intrigue's culture, and more importantly, for people interested in creating one? Like, what did you do, or what do you do to create and maintain that?
Yeah, cool. I mean, this is a very passionate subject for me. So I want to just take a quick minute to decipher maybe some common misconceptions that happen with regard to culture and core values. So this is something I think you know really well. I know you know really well. I've heard you speak about it. Culture exists no matter what inside an organizational setting, whether it's intentional or not, there's a culture. If people are allowed to be late, there's a lack of discipline in the culture. If people are held accountable to a high regard, then there's a culture of accountability. So culture exists. Now, from my perspective, culture is really important because you got a whole bunch of human beings that are all, bouncing around inside four walls, inside Zoom environments for a bunch of hours every single day, more so than they spend with their family. It feels like an obligation and responsibility for leaders to create a culture where people can grow and become awesome, like their own awesome. Now, that's from a whole bunch of stories of like going into shitty cultures, and just life's too short to work in a shitty culture, and there's too many of them, which is too bad. But the question then becomes, well, how do you create a cool culture? How do you create fun? How do you create what you want in terms of the organizational environment? And that's, I think, where core values are the thing. So our thing is the core values are in our daily habits, routines, and traditions. And like the lore, like the lore of the organization. There are stories that get told that really personify core values. And so if core values can live with mechanisms that put teeth into them on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis that are in habits, routines, and traditions, those core values can become what shape culture over time.
Can you give an example of what you mean by a habit or routine?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a core value of learning, practice an unquenchable thirst for applicable knowledge. One of the mechanisms we have in place inside the organization is leader building. It's a program where someone, when they come on board to the team, get put into a cohort in Slack where they have prescribed learning for the first, call it whatever, 9 to 10 months. And then it goes into open learning. And they read a chapter from a book or they watch a video, and then they write their takeaway, their actionable insight that they learned from the resource in Slack. And then Monday morning in Team Huddle, we share those takeaways in a group environment. If you don't do it 3 times in a year, you quit. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And now we've created people that have habits where, call it 40 times a year, they learn and take the moments to reflect and think about what they learned. Because I believe growth happens in the reflection pause than more than the consumption of info. So now you've got 30 folks, 40 actionable takeaways. You got 1,200 actionable takeaways in an organizational setting. And we're bringing, learning, practice, unquenchable thirst for applicable knowledge to life. And that's in a weekly habit.
And that's really, now what have you observed? I was going to say if any, but there has to be, not just from an organizational culture, but that kind of cultural action. I can't imagine anything other than it creates some interesting personal growth in people.
It's the best. Well, the first book people read is 15 Invaluable Laws of Personal Growth by John C. Maxwell. So that's prescribed reading. Everybody has to read that. Their first 15 weeks is the 15 laws. And that's just how that goes. But yeah, it's also unbelievable too, because you have AI come and take a total right U-turn, whatever in the world, and we've got 30 people in this habit. Okay, everybody for 2 weeks, go leader building on AI and how it applies to your role and what you can do to find something to make your role better. And then you got 30 people literally just, okay. And then next week on Monday, you hear all the takeaways and people are starting to use it. And it just really creates the opportunity for speed. And I think that's, Jack Welch, as much as like, he's old school, whatever, GE, whatever. Yeah. He did have some cool ideas. And one of them I think is around this idea of like an organization's true competitive advantage is its ability to get to speed and be fast in the way that we respond to a marketplace.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's one of the mechanisms we have. Another one, this is super simple, but we have a big, I don't know where he is. Oh, he's over there, purple cow, Gary. Gary gets passed from one team member to another for exemplifying a remarkable core value. Like they say they represented or were living out a core value remarkably in the week, and it goes from team member to team member. And that's team, everyone has everyone's back. It highlights a core value. We use awesome citations, these things. They're little pieces of paper that say awesome on them. And then we check a bunch of boxes, and then we give it to them for demonstrating a core value for client learning, leadership, action, team trust. That's another one. We have C-flat awards, which honestly is like, it's the biggest, most impactful use of core values I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I'd love to break it down for you. I just don't want to spend too much time on the topic if you want to go somewhere else.
No. What did you call it?
So we have our core value awards.
Okay.
So we call it C-flat. The other thing, I mean, core values, I could go on forever, Warren. I think it's one of the most important things a leader needs to understand how to bring to life inside an organization.
And I love the fact it's bringing it to life, because I've been in lots of organizations, and I've, as a coach, I've had arguments with people about it in a way, that having values that are written on a piece of paper and sitting above the microwave in the kitchen is not the same as creating a culture. And that there's work that has to happen to activate those values. It isn't enough to just to come up with them and hire a consultant to come up with them and then post them somewhere. There's actually things leadership needs to do to make them alive.
Yeah, and a great litmus test would be if you were to leave the organization for 12 months and come back, would the core values and culture be exactly the way you left it or better?
Mm-hmm.
And if your answer is emphatically yes, and here's why, you're rocking. Yeah. Otherwise, or you're just an egotistical maniac, which could be the truth, right?
Well, both can be true at the same time.
Okay, but here's the thing. Okay, so you take your core values, whatever they are, and I think a lot of people, one of the things we've done with some folks is, and you've probably never heard of this, Warren, happening ever, when an entrepreneur is at work and a team member does something and they put their hands and they go, "Oh my God, what are they doing?"
Never happens.
Never happens. And probably to the audience, they never hear that before or see that or have experienced that. But usually what we find is that people have a hard time trying to figure out what aspirational values should be. Like, we can be any words. Let's pick a bunch of words we think are cool, and then we'll figure out how to make it, our core values. But typically we find the contrast is a better approach to defining core values. When you or your team are like, no effing way is that cool here. If you're in a contracting organization and people are, leaving broken tools in the toolbox, not telling anybody, the next person that comes in is just like, this is garbage. So there's no ownership, there's no accountability, there's no support, there's no teamwork. That thing that grinds your gears, that makes your blood boil, is typically the opposite of a core value.
Yeah.
I find that a lot more meaningful.
Yeah. And it's a very visceral way for people to get at it.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's real.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's shift a little bit. Just so you and I met in your capacity as president of a chapter of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, a group that we both love. Now you're a busy guy, as you said, family, business, clients, all that. I get the business attraction of joining a group of other entrepreneurs, to share experiences and ideas and best practices and all that. But what made you want to take on the leadership role?
They gave me a trip to Cabo.
Oh, it was bribery.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I had newborn twins and a 2-year-old son. And I was like, there's no effing way I'm taking on the presidency. You got to be kidding me. And I was on the board already my first year. I hadn't been in EO 12 months. And they're like, but I mean, like, we'll give you a trip to Cabo. So I was like, hey, Megs, we're going to get a trip to Cabo. You like, is this cool? Like, you want to come? Like, you do this? She's like, yeah, let's do it. And thank God, because that changed my life. in the biggest way. That president's meeting in Cabo in Mexico was life-changing.
How so?
Being able to be around the leaders of leaders, and the leaders of leaders of leaders, like EO is a bunch of leaders. They're entrepreneurs by definition.
Mm-hmm.
The boards of chapters are leaders, servant leaders of those leaders. Presidents are the leaders of the leaders of the leaders. And so the cream rises to the top. You end up with some really epic human beings, because like when you want to take on a president's role, it is not nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And to do so for $0, except for the fact that some people understand more so after the fact, it is really the only real world leadership practice that you can get with no risk to your career. Learning how to lead and serve a bunch of batshit crazy entrepreneurs has a lot of wonderful byproducts that hit your own business. So and then I also believe strongly that you are the average of the people you hang out with most. And so being able to be exposed to that group, years later, I moved to Costa Rica for 2 years because of somebody I met there. I'm in another forum with people across the world, doing things I never thought I would ever be able to do because of that meeting and the relationships I formed there. So yeah, there's a bunch.
Nice. And out of that, so I've observed you as somebody with some pretty natural and authentic leadership abilities. Can you, like, all false humility aside, just step back and dissect or assess, like, what do you think makes you a good leader?
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure. I think from I'm an emergent leader naturally. So, and I witnessed this as I grew up in high school and stuff like that. In group settings, I see what the end can look like quickly. I can synthesize information quickly. I can communicate well, so I can get people to see what I see. But that only goes so far, right? I also have no F's to give. I don't care if I mess up. Like, I'm willing to fail forward. I'm willing to put myself out there. I'm willing to sell. I think good leaders need to sell, whether it's the products and services they represent or if it's the people that they need to lead. Sales is a huge component to it. But then I think the biggest thing that you witnessed, though, which was, kind of a Rob 2.0, was that facilitated leadership is a lot more effective than directorial leadership. And I used to be a director more than I was a facilitator.
Right.
Facilitation takes more preparation. It takes more care. It takes more energy. It slows down to speed up.
If someone is to look at the facilitated versus directive, what would they see differently?
Yeah, well, I mean, you go into a group setting, we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the focus going to be for this year? Well, I think it's going to be this, and this. All right, let's go. You're going to do that. You're going to do that. You're going to do that. I don't want to hear what your ideas are. Shush. I know what I'm doing. You're better than you. I'm the leader. Shush. Okay, I'll hear what you have to say. Okay, thanks for talking. That's enough. Let's keep moving. And it can come off probably more crass than that in a real world environment. Whereas facilitation is, okay, I'm going to take a day to myself or with my business partner and figure out, what is the direction of this business? What do we need to look at? What can I go learn from our year? What information do we have that I can then send to people ahead of time so they can orient their thinking to be contributors in that session together? Who on that team is going to be able to contribute to what, and how can I set them up for success so that they can start to see things the way they need to see them for the company to be healthier? That takes time, that takes effort. And then going there and giving people an opportunity to think, giving people an opportunity to debate. And then I think in strategic sessions for leaders, there's a magic hybrid. Because if you go as a leader, as a visionary leader, into a room with 6 other people and you want to facilitate the whole day and try to get them where you are, that is not fun. And it is draining and probably won't even get to where you want it to go. But if you give people, like, here's the one thing we have to do this year, and here's why I think that, and everything that I've been exposed to and experience and information in the company is the 1 or 2 things. Here's 3 more I think we should consider, and here's why. I need your help, though, to sharpen these up. Is there anything I'm missing? Do you see something that I'm completely off on? And what I found with that approach is that folks are stoked that there's clarity. They love telling you why something isn't or is going to work, and they have a hard time coming up with something from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're incorporating their opinions and their thoughts and their expertise You're not giving away everything to like facilitation because you know there's something. That's why you're the leader of the organization or entrepreneur. You do have a vision. So I think there's that hybrid that really makes it fun for everybody and really helpful.
And it builds trust too, like they know they're in safe hands.
There's definitely something to that, no question.
All right. So last question about you, because I want to shift a little bit to what's going on in the market and some other advice you might have.
Sure.
But I don't know too many successful people who haven't been kicked in the teeth at least a couple of times. Do you have what I call a favorite failure? You know, the one that taught you the most or propelled you the most?
The list was just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I'd say one of my biggest blunders was casting a vision haphazardly, like impromptu, to a group of, it was like maybe 12 of us. I said, okay, I got this vision. This is what we're going to do. It's this big thing. It's going to have all these different components. It's going to have these tie-ins, all these different softwares. It's going to be awesome. We're going to do all this all the time. And it's just like, and we're going to get there. We're going to be in, it's going to be for like 1,000 people. And we're going to shift the way that we're doing business. And then